Okay, so the first thing I'm going to cover, just in case, is the Link and Learn taxes site that's available through the IRS. So I've gone into the main website, www.irs.gov, and in the search engine, Link and Learn taxes, and that's automatically going to take you through the process of the area that that VITA sites use to get the information that they need to work through the process. So I'm just gonna click, since I already have it there. And it's just the first hit, the Link and Learn taxes. And the same thing, the same hit. I'm trying to get to the main area of the Link and Learn tax. So this is the main area. So this is where you're gonna find different resources, which if you're not familiar with this page, strongly recommend to get very familiar. And I'm just gonna click on the areas and I'm gonna talk about certain things, but I'm gonna click right here where it says, click to see the content of each course. So this area is what I call an interactive area. Each of these areas launches several PowerPoints, and it's all interactive. Interactive in the sense that it gives you the information and then takes you through a process of a quiz, if you will. And then of course, it gives you a lot of information and references the resources and so forth. And so you have the basic, and then you have the advanced, depending on the menu that you're interested in. So again, highly encouraged to visit this area. At the bottom, you have other sources of information as well, the bottom of the screen. So I'm gonna go back on the previous screen. And then you have the practice lab, which eventually is one that we're gonna visit today as we work through the problems. But this practice lab is the one that eventually you'll use. If you have not certified in either levels, in the process, you're gonna have to complete tax returns. And this is a practice lab that is used to complete those tax returns that are embedded in either the basic or the advanced. If you are a coordinator, under Partner and Volunteer Resource Center, has a lot of information in here. So again, highly encouraged to visit all the sources of information that they have here. So I'm just visiting the areas. Quality and volunteer tax alerts, anything that's coming up new, especially as coordinators that we wanna be abreast. This is where you're gonna find that information as well. And then of course, the latest tax information for individuals. The last item here is the processing of taking the certifications. So this requires, if you've never done a certification, this requires a login and a password. And then you sign in and you're gonna see the different types of exams. So as a volunteer, everyone needs to complete the examination on the standards of conduct. You have to do that one first, followed by the interview and intake and quality review test. And then followed by if you're taking the basic or if you're taking the advanced. And of course, if you're a coordinator, then you have to also complete the coordinator exam. So again, this is a different area. You have other links here for practices as well that you can access. So again, a lot of resources that are embedded in this area of the Link and Learn taxes. So again, I just wanted to share that with you. Any questions before I leave this this area? No questions?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Okay, so now I'm going to access my publication 4012. So I should have it here already opened. So I don't know if you can share that if you do not have access to your publication 4012. And you could also access it here. If you were in the IRS website, let me go back under the Resource Center, I believe. And there's your 4012 and your 4491. Again, all of this is available through the IRS website. Okay, 4012. So on the 4012 is, this is a publication that all volunteers need to have at their site. You literally need to have it next to you as a reference guide as you work through any of the tax returns. And of course, besides having the volunteer resource guide, there's always has to be a coordinator there to assist as well. So this is, most people refer to this as a Bible, but again, it's a quick resource guide. So I'm just going to take you through this, okay? The table of contents. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to visit some of the areas that many a times we probably just access the 4012 and don't really pay attention to everything that's there for us, because it does have a lot of information and maybe questions that we, maybe have had, or maybe, had a situation and didn't know that the information is here. So I'm going to visit the area of how to use this guide. So I'm just gonna click here on my table of contents as we work through this. And so it tells you that this publication is used mainly to assist as you're working through the tax software. The 4012 has a lot of screenshots, if you will, of the TaxSlayer software that assists in the process of entering information. Sometimes maybe we have a doubt or we have a question as to how exactly we're supposed to populate a field in TaxSlayer, where your 4012 more than likely has a screenshot of that. So again, paying attention that that's one of the things that this publication provides. The next one is the scope of service. This is very important. Us as volunteers, as coordinators, that we pay attention on, specifically on the certification level, because the certification level is going to assist us in understanding what type of return can we do and what we cannot do. So that the ones that we can do, again, basic certification, again, like the word says, basic. So you're not gonna be able to do too many of the different types of returns. So basic sort of limits what you can do. But right in here, it tells you, okay, so this is a nice little sheet, and it tells you the forms where this information is found and the lines and boxes, and whether this is within scope for VITA services. So again, if we had doubts or questions in regards to that, this table here will assist us in the process. So again, if you have not had a chance or time to look at this, this gives us a lot of information. So I'm just gonna scan through this so you can see how much is in there. Okay, the next one. So I'm just gonna go back to my table of contents. Otherwise, I'm gonna be hunting for things. The next one is VITA quality site requirements. Okay, so this section just reminds us of the importance of the QSRs, and it tells you that there's 10. So in order for anyone to assist in the preparation of tax returns, of course, we need to go through the process of the certification. And embedded in that is the intake and interview quality review process as a certification and as a process within doing tax returns. That becomes very important. Confirming photo identifications and taxpayer identification numbers, reference materials, like I mentioned, your 4012. When you become certified, we do need to have a copy of the volunteer agreement, of course, signed, electronically signed by volunteers. The timeliness of filing tax returns, the civil rights, the correct site identification number, correct EFIN, and security. So 1 through 5, QSR 1 through 5 is for everyone, okay? Everyone meaning all of us that are gonna be volunteering. The QSR 6 through 10 is primarily for coordinators. So coordinators, basically we're responsible for everything. So as a volunteer, the primary thing is 1 through 5. So again, it gives you that information. So now I'm gonna go back and visit each of the charts here. And I'm in chart A. The reason I'm gonna visit this chart specifically because there are some changes. Not so much in this one, but in one that as we move forward, it is a significant change. So this chart A talks about for most people who must file. So it gives you an understanding, a nice little neat table that basically takes you through the process of who must file, mainly you're required, okay? So this provides you with that information. The next one is for children and other dependents. So we're talking about someone who's 19 years old and they're a dependent of their parents, they're in college. So this would be the chart to be looking at, because then we're talking about someone who's a dependent of their parents. They had a part-time job, then we would be looking at this area right here, single dependent. Again, I told you that we're 19 years old, then we're looking at under 65 and not blind. So we would be looking at this area to figure out whether the dependent is required to do a tax return. Here we go. This is the area that's seen a change. And to me, it's a significant change. And the area here is other situations when you must file a tax return. The most common one for us in our area is number 3, having a self-employment of at least $400. Someone who has gotten their health insurance through the marketplace and received advanced premium tax credits, and they have form 1095-A. So that's an automatic. If they have that form, they must file. They don't have a choice. Look at the last one, number 8. That's a significant change. So if someone has received advanced payments for 2021 child tax credit, now they must file a tax return. There is, that automatically puts them in that category. So that is a significant change for this area. That's why I need to cover the chart, in particular this chart here. Let me see what else I'm going to cover here. I'm going to go back to my table. And the other one, the last one, which is chart D, who should file. And again, for us, the most common one is usually the person who's 19 years old and is in college and they work a part-time job. Usually they fall in the category of who should file because they get to at least get their federal income tax that was withheld. That's usually the circumstance. But again, this chart is there. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my table of contents. Okay, so I'm going to be looking at Form 1040, the area of job aid, which is B1. So if you had never paid attention to what's in your 4012, so the Form 1040 is noted in this page, and within each section of the 1040, it tells you where you're going to find information on how to enter that section. So if you notice, tab B is for the upper portion, which is basically personal information. Then you have tab F, C, and D, D being all sources of income. So this is a very nice area to visit, to understand how the system works and where the information lies on your 4012 in reference to each section of your 1040. So it continues and it continues. Okay, this next section talks about the schedules. And so you have the primary tax form, your 1040, followed by the detail. And the detail is in the schedules. So you have Schedule 1 that will have additional income and adjustments to income. And then it tells you again, where do you find that information in your reference guide. Schedule 2 is any additional taxes. That is tab H. Any additional credits and payments, tabs G, H, and J. And then the next one, I think this is an area that we don't pay attention to, but Form 13614C, which is your intake and interview sheet form. This gives you, basically dissects the form and the importance of the information that lies on this form. So again, this is all embedded in your 4012. I will be talking about this form extensively as we start working on that first tax return. One of the things to understand on this form, and I'll mention it here, is in particular here on this area, which is a little bit grayed off. As a volunteer, you are responsible for completing this area. I know my experience has been that as a volunteer, volunteers forget that this is one of the areas that they need to complete. And you complete this either by asking the tax preparer, which is ideal. And I go again, asking either through a phone call or face-to-face or however you're going to deal with your client. But again, this area needs to be populated by the tax preparer. And again, all the information here on the second part, which is extremely important for completing the tax return. I highlighted this section at the very bottom. We're going to be talking about this section at the bottom, which is receive advanced child tax credit payments. And again, this will be on the form for the clients to populate. And again, then you have all the other information that's part of the completion of the tax return. In particular, the questions at the very end that gather information. And of course, the questions here, some of them are embedded as part of the processing of the return and tax layer. And then here starts the new tax return. Okay, so now I'm going to switch over to another section. Does anyone have any questions before I continue?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
No.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the intake form. The intake first, so that we don't get confused. The intake form that's available in the South Texas scenarios is slightly different because it was a previous intake form. And so this is the most current intake form that we have. If you notice, the update date is October of 2021. Whether that form will see an update again before we get started, maybe, don't know. It just depends on what other things need to be part of the process. So just for your FYI. So again, the importance of this form is that the client, the tax client, is the one that is to complete the form with the assistance, if needed, of the person that is as a receptionist or the person that is in the front. They may assist the client in completing the form. So if you notice at the very top, it talks about what the client will need. And basically, all their tax information is required. The other thing I will add here is, and I know it's in the second page, but if the person did receive an advance on the child tax credit, if they opted for an advance, then they must also have the letter. And the letter will state how much did they receive in advance child tax credit payments during the year. And as far as I can remember, there's going to be a total of 6. The last one is actually around the corner. According to their schedule, is tomorrow. The last child tax credit that people will be getting for this tax year. And so, so there must be a letter. And so we cannot produce tax returns without that letter. It's going to be extremely important. And I will talk about the letter as we move along. But we do have a sample of that letter. But again, so besides all of this, we also need the letter, not only of the advanced child tax credit payments, but also of the recovery economic payment. The recovery economic payment was received sometime between March and April of this year. And that was a third and final payment that we have received. That one is different from the previous payments. The way they worked that one out is they used 2019 or 2020 tax returns. And for everyone that appeared on the tax return, it was $1,400 per person. And that was what was different on the last return, that everyone got $1,400. So again, now we're talking about a separate letter, okay? And so this is going to be, you know, it's always an issue because people don't understand the importance of letters as they receive them from the IRS. And so those are things that we're gonna have to work through as we look at this upcoming tax season, is, you know, gathering that information. That information becomes extremely important. And you're gonna see that as we work through some of the problems. And so again, those are things to take into consideration. So besides tax information, we need social security cards of the primary taxpayers plus any dependents. I know that at our site, and I'm assuming that all sites are different, but I know that when we have recurring clients, we're able to pull the information from the previous year. That's what they opted for us to be able to do. And so we're able to retrieve information, and the information is already there. And so we're able to use that information. We just verify all the information that is still the same and so forth. But we're able to do that, again, for our recurring clients. We still need a picture ID, okay, for our primary taxpayers. And again, the completion of the form and making sure that the information is accurate. Bottom line, the client has to understand that we work through their information that they provided to us. So again, honesty, we expect honesty from the clients. As volunteers, we're not liable for the information that they have placed or have not placed on the intake form. So we're not liable as volunteers. The only thing I will bring up at this point, because I am talking about the intake sheet, is in case you get to converse with your client, and again, in some instances, we don't know how much interaction we're gonna have with a client this coming tax season. But if you were to engage in conversation and the client says, oh, by the way, on weekends, I do yard work, I do tree trimmings and all that good stuff. And so because we have knowledge that this is happening, that this is what the client does, then of course, at that time, we are responsible for exercising due diligence on our part. And then talking with the client and requesting information regarding that type of income that they're receiving on, because of the work that they're doing. So again, as a volunteer, exercising due diligence becomes very important. That we do our part to making sure that we have an accurate tax return from the knowledge that we've gathered from the client. That's our responsibility, the exercising of due diligence in our part. So again, the client will fill this out, okay? It's very important on number 10. I know for us at our site, number 10 is extremely important, especially when we're dealing with young taxpayers who are in college or university, and they don't understand the importance of question number 10. So question number 10 becomes very important, especially when we figured out their age. And then if we get to converse with them and so forth, we figure out, okay, then more than likely your parents are going to be claiming you. So number 10 is extremely important when we're looking at this form. Number 11, identification PIN. In case they've been victims of identity theft, we need a letter. The letter has to be currently dated, whether it be December of 2021 or January of 2020. I mean, 22. Those are the timeframes when the IRS will send letters. We cannot use letters that were received from a previous year. The return will be automatically rejected. So it's important that if you see yes, there must be a letter that gives us the identity, that PIN that we're supposed to insert into the software. Down here at the bottom, listing the names of everyone who lived with you the last year, other than your spouse. You do have some that wanna place their spouse here because the spouse did not work. And so they wanna put them down here. That's not possible. The spouse, if any, needs to appear at the top. Okay, anyone you supported but did not live with you the last year. That is For example, somebody that's away in college, okay? They're the one of the exceptions to the rule that if they're away from college and you're supporting them, then of course they are your dependents. Parents is the other one. They don't need to live with you as long as you can show that you provided for their support. And so again, those are usually the exemptions as far as did not live with you the entire year or any part of the year. And again, this is the gray area that was stated earlier that needs to be completed by the volunteer. The next part, the second part of this entry and intake sheet is the information that will eventually be used to go through the process of completing the tax return. Income, all sources of income. You have yes, no, and unsure, which means you as a volunteer, you need to make sure that there are yeses or nos. You cannot have unsures. If there are any boxes that are unsure, then this is where talking to the client, communicating with the client, and then switching that to a yes or a no. Along the side, you have B's and A's, meaning if you're certified in the basic or you're certified in the advanced. So again, you as a volunteer need to pay attention to when you get this form and you get the documentation. Wait a minute, can I do this tax return because of my certification level? And so again, and when in doubt, you need to ask your site coordinator that's there with you. Because you don't want to start a return and then realize down the road, after you've done half of it, that you should not be doing it. So it's important that you pay attention to this area. Along each area, it also gives you the form that you should be looking for. If you notice, wages or salary, form W-2. The question to ask, how many jobs did you have? So if they tell you I had 4 jobs and the assumption is they were in different places, then there should be 4 W-2s. Okay, so watching for that becomes very important. We're talking about a college bound or someone that has a college bound dependent. Then we want to see a 1098-T in the process. They have some money at the bank and earns interest. We want to see a 1099-INT and so forth. So here it gives you Social Security. Social Security is very notorious for people to forget to bring the form. And so again, Social Security, it requires a form SSA 1099. Usually I tell my clients, oh, it's the pink form that folds out vertically. And when you say that it's a pink form, then they'll say, oh, I remember getting a pink form, but I didn't realize I had to bring it with me. So that becomes extremely important. Any other sources of income? Same thing, gives you examples. Expenses that are attributed to their income. The most common for us is college, educational expenses, form 1098-T. The area for number 5 is for itemized deductions, except for charitable contributions. Charitable contributions is still there from last year. That even though you don't itemize, if the person does not itemize, they're still able to deduct $300 if it's a single taxpayer, or if it's a joint return, $300 a piece that they're able to deduct. Again, these are for the ones that are not itemizing, they're able to deduct that as well. Then you have child and dependent care expenses. Again, they must have some form of document or statement from the child care facility or anyone that has provided child care for the client. Educators, okay, they're eligible to get a maximum of $250. Student loan interest, Form 1098E. Again, if the client does not have the form and they sign off here that, yes, I have student loan interest, but they don't have the form, just remember that a lot of these different areas, they're able to access their phone, log into their account, and they can pull their information. And that is acceptable, that they can pull their information using their phone. Or if you have the luxury of a computer station, they can log in and they can print the form. The last item here are part 5, live events. The last two, 10 and 11, received an economic impact payment in 2021. And I believe that's letter 1444. Receive an advance child tax credit payment. And I believe that's letter 6419. Trying to remember so many numbers. Yes, it's letter 6419 that the client eventually should be receiving if they received advanced child tax credit payments. So again, if they answered yes and yes to 10 and 11, there must be letters. There must be something in writing. I can tell you that number 10 is a lot easier to figure out. And I don't think 11 is very easy to figure out. Not unless they can also produce copies of their bank statement, and it's easy to figure out from there, but preferably the letter. The letter will make a lot more sense as to what they received. Again, just remembering that these items, 10, 11, if when doing the tax return, either are not entered because the client says, I did not receive any of this information, I never received any payments. It's a reminder to tell the client, if you did receive any of these payments and we say no, that you did not receive them, then it's an automatic reject on the tax return. It'll automatically get rejected just because they don't want to disclose the information, or they think they can, you know, the IRS is going to give them more money. But they don't realize that the money is coming from the US Treasury, which is the IRS. So again, important. The last section is information that will be embedded in your tax layer. Question number 1 is an embedded question in the tax layer. How do you want to receive communication from the IRS other than English? So this will be a question in the tax layer software. So we need to pay attention as to whether they entered yes or no, or what is it that they put as a language. This becomes important because the IRS wants to know, okay, we're gonna send you a letter. How do you prefer the letter, in English or Spanish or some other language? Number 2 has always been a question in your tax layer software. Again, this $3 that goes into this fund does not affect a person's tax return. Okay, it has nothing to do with the money that they are getting back. They will not get assessed or charged a fee for the $3. If they are getting a refund, how do they like the refund? Direct deposit? Would they like to purchase US savings bonds? Do they want to split their account, their refund into multiple accounts? If they have a balance, what is it they want to do? Again, The question number 5, if they lived in a declared disaster area. And then number 6, I don't think I had seen this question before. Did you or your spouse, if filing jointly, receive a letter from the IRS? Okay, and I'm assuming hopefully that's in regards to those other letters. The last items are questions that will appear in your tax layer at the very bottom. And this is just gathering information from the client. And again, this will be populated as well by the client. If this information is not populated, then as a volunteer, it's your responsibility to make sure that it is populated. So that becomes very important. So I'm assuming everyone got the scenarios, or did you put them in chat, or? Let's see. Did everyone get them?
I'm sending a copy of the South Texas scenarios just now on the chat.
Okay. I know for the students, I had emailed it to you earlier today in your TSE webmail.
Yes, I did send that to Natalia as well.
Okay. Okay, so this is the South Texas scenarios, and now I'm going to open up as well. Let me see how I can do both. Okay, so let me just show you here. There's, you decide which is the best way you want to go through this, but I'm gonna come back here. I'm in the IRS website. Okay, this is the link and learn. First hit, and then you have the software practice lab. The general password is all in caps, and it's Train Pro Web. All in caps, Train Pro Web. So this is one way to get to it. The other way is to the actual link or URL for the TaxSlayer Pro link. The only difference is, and let me just show you, so I'm gonna come in here and put in caps, Train Pro, oops. Okay, so once I put the Train Pro Web, it got me to my username and login. And that is using the link and learn. Over here, using the URL at the actual, once we start get started with the actual services for VITA, this is going to be the URL that will already be saved on your computers, or the URL that you're gonna remember. This is a URL I'm gonna use, the link. And so this is a practice lab. So you decide which is best, IRS, link and learn, practice lab, Train Pro Web, and you get here. Or you come over here, the vita.taxslayerpro.com, and there's the practice lab. Same thing, if you notice. It got me to the same place. Okay, so I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna go ahead and access and put in my login and password. Okay. So this is a practice lab. Before I continue here, I will encourage everyone to have the time between now and before we get started with the VITA services. I was listening to this webinar down here at the bottom, software enhancements. This is a webinar that I highly encourage everyone to listen to go through. It has all the changes that the tax layer software will see for the tax season. And at the time that it was recorded, it's what they know that will have enhancements. However, there are possibilities of them enhancing other things. But that webinar does touch on in particular on the changes, and specifically for the certain areas that have seen great changes. It touches on that as well. So I highly recommend everyone to make the time and listen to it. I did about 45, 50 minutes of it. And then the next part, I'll do it probably either the weekend or maybe next week. But I did, listen for it for 45 minutes, and it was a good webinar to listen to. So this is a practice lab. So I'm not gonna do anything here just yet. So I'm gonna try to open both at the same time. See how that works. So this is the scenarios. So the first one we're going to do, which is Yale. Yale has a little bit of everything. And so I'm just gonna access it and just open it up. Okay, so here's the intake and interview sheet for Yale. And if you notice, Yale is the first name on the intake form, and then we have Thomas. And so let me talk a little bit about this, because I know that we get those situations at our site. So if you notice, it's the female spouse name that appears first, followed by the husband, wife, and then husband. For IRS purposes, it matters, but it doesn't matter. Okay, it matters when history, okay, there's been history created with the IRS in which his name appeared first versus hers. That becomes important. So if there's been history, and I mean history created with his name first, then that's how you want to keep continuing doing the tax return. Why? Because history with the IRS is built from the primary Social Security number. It creates an internal IRS file with that primary Social Security number. That's the importance of the history to be built. Now, if they're newly married and this is the first time they're doing a tax return and she wants to appear first because she's the only one that worked, then, that's fine. But technically, you don't want to, switch, because again, you're distorting that history in that file that the IRS has created for the client. So that's the importance. I know some clients are very adamant. I want to appear first because, he didn't work or she didn't work or so forth. And again, it's about building that history with the IRS. That's where it becomes important. So if you notice, she's a teacher and he's a retired police officer. And they have phone numbers, so forth. So remember, part of the process, you must have social security cards, you must have picture ID, you must have their information in regards to the tax information and the forms that they'll need. And again, section 2 regarding marital status, the information on the dependents. Again, date of birth is very important, not only for the primary taxpayers, but also for the dependents. In particular, with the dependents, there's a lot of credits. They get triggered by their date of birth. So it's important that this information is, first of all, that the client gave us the correct information, and then that we enter it correctly as well, because that becomes very important. Okay, the next area here, we don't have all of it complete, but there's telling us that on part 3, we do have wages and 3 jobs are shown. There's interest, there's disability income, there's retirement from an IRA, there's jury duty. So that's sources of income, expenses, contributions to a retirement account, childcare expenses, teacher supplies, and student loan interest. So this is basically that second page. Then you have the third page here. Again, talks about direct deposit and so forth. If you notice, this has an email. If the tax client wants to provide an email, they may. It's not required. You know, if they're getting a refund, what is it that they want to do with it? In this case, they want to purchase a savings. They don't want to purchase a savings bond. They want a direct deposit. They want to split it. Okay, so they've answered the questions here. Then there's some notes. So it says that Gail is a 7th grade teacher. Thomas was a police officer for 22 years until May of 2021, when he was injured on the job and retired on disability from the police department. He would have been able to retire at age 60. His medical costs were covered by his insurance. He was able to maintain health coverage to the department with premiums paid from his disability pension. Gail has a brother, Richard, that lived with him for several years. He's totally and permanently disabled. He had an income of $3,900 from Social Security benefits, and he's unable to contribute to his own support. So Gail had jury duty for 4 weeks, which are equivalent to 20 weekdays. And while she served on jury duty, she received $40 from the court. Her employer contributed to her pay for the salary for the first 2 weeks of her jury service on the condition that any jury duty pay received for those 10 weekdays would be surrendered to the employer, which she did. She also had interest from a student loan. And it says she couldn't find the one from last year. They brought in last year's return, prepared at the site, which showed the same amount on her 1098E. She also had $675 worth of supplies for her classroom. She worked the entire school year except for jury duty pay. She also had daycare expenses. She paid $1,500 to the Hillsdale School District for after school for Melissa. And it was for January through May until the husband became disabled. And then it gives information for the child care facility. If they want to, if they get a refund, this is the information for the processing of the direct deposit. And then we have the information on Social Security cards. And of course, we would have IDs as well. And then here it says that they received an economic impact payment of the total of this amount. And they opted to receive advance child tax credits. So let's see here. Okay, so let me see here, hold on. Okay, they do have a son, and I just wanted to cover this real quick. They do have a son, and he's a freshman. And so it gives us the information down here when we get to the education credits. So just to be aware of the situation with the son. So the notes are there. So now let's see if we can get started with entering the information and the information that's been provided to us in the notes. Okay. Okay. So here's the practice lab. So we're gonna start the new tax return. So it's this area we select. Okay, you have the information regarding the Social Security number. And again, the Social Security number information is provided here. And so in the practice lab, the middle two numbers are always 0. So this allows us that we're not gonna duplicate Social Security numbers or to have valid Social Security numbers, because Social Security numbers do not have zeros in the middle. So I'm just gonna enter the information as it appears here for Gail. And I'm just gonna tab. And the last 4 digits, you can make it whatever you like. In this case, they didn't provide us with a so I just added 4250 at the end. Okay, and again, this area is just a message telling you that they're still working and finalizing the information for tax year 2021. And just to be aware that they continuously are making changes. So we already saw the information. And so in regards to their filing status, what is going to be the filing status for the tax return based on the information that's been provided? What's going to be the filing status?
Mary filing jointly.
Okay. And again, this is based on the information that's been provided to us. And just remember here, when we start entering the information, I'm going to go ahead and set up my caps lock. It's a lot easier, especially when we're doing these services, for us to be able to review the information when it's capitalized. So I'm using the caps lock to enter the information. And again, the information that appears here as you enter it should be the information as to how it appears in the Social Security cards. She does have a middle initial. And there's a Social Security number that I entered initially. And I'm just gonna use the information that's been provided in the intake sheet. So if you notice here, the number 4, this is her date of birth, which is March 27 of 1970. The other thing that I'd like to also confirm this information is with her ID. So making sure that they did not put incorrect information when they put it here on the form. So using their ID just to confirm the information is a good practice. Okay, she's a teacher. So here you have some information. So as far as the client being disabled or blind, you have the information here. If there were full-time students, or the information is no. So as long as none of these are yeses, we leave them as blank boxes. If we had any things to say yes or confirm, of course, we would check the boxes. And here's the information. Taxpayer wishes to contribute $3 to the presidential campaign. And remember that that's at the very end of the intake form, which is right in here about the presidential campaign. And they both said no, or they did not indicate anything there. So we leave it blank. Okay, some new questions that are appearing here is taxpayer wishes to elect to use their 2019 earned income to figure their 2021 earned income credit and or child tax credit. In that video that I mentioned about the enhancements and all that, they touch on this. They emphasize that if this is a situation for the client, that it's very important for them to have their previous tax return, or that they're a recurring client and you can access the information, because you need to have accurate information if this is what they're choosing to do. And this is only for the earned income credit or the child tax credit that maybe in year 2019, and again, 2019, not 2020. That's the other thing that the webinar, the gentleman that was doing the webinar, he emphasizes paying attention that it's using 2019, not 2020. 2020 cannot be used. And so again, that's something that he touched on. What else here? Here's that question regarding communication with the IRS. If the taxpayer prefers to receive written communication other than English, there's that question. Okay, the other one is on accessible format for accessibility purposes. That's the other question. So those are new questions that are in here that were not there before. Okay, so now the spouse's name. And again, entering as it appears on the Social Security card. So Thomas A. Yale. And then his number. And then his information as far as date of birth is up here on the intake sheet. So that's October the 1st of 1965. And his occupation, he's retired. And again, these are questions in regards to the spouse. And address as it appears on the intake form. One of the things that I forgot to mention as I was creating the return, remember that as we provide services, we have recurring clients. And as recurring clients, when we're first entering, especially when we just entered their social security number, and again, the primary social security number, the system by default will tell us that that this client has population, has information from the previous year or a tax return from the previous year. Do you want to bring that information forward? I know that our VITA site, we allow to bring that information forward. However, even if we bring the information forward, everything needs to be verified. Everything, you still need to go through the process, but it minimizes the entering if some of the information is the same, especially on their personal information. Now, when we're dealing with a married filing joint return, we always want to have two phone numbers. And one of the things to remind the client regarding phone numbers is that it's not for the IRS to call them. It's for us as the coordinators that are responsible for doing the reports and taking care of rejects and so forth. It's a reminder that it's only for us, that we will be calling them. The IRS does not call the client. So I'm going to continue here. And the next question is asking, do we have dependents? And yes, we do. And so we have Melissa. So Melissa is a daughter. And now that we're here looking at the date of birth for Melissa, so how old is Melissa? Based on the information that's provided. How old is Melissa?
I'm sorry, Miss Elise, I can't see. I would have answered, but
Okay, hold up. I'm trying to keep both open. So can you see?
yes, I understand. That's okay. I mean, it's me. I'm kind of blind.
Can you all see? She was born on May 7th of 2010.
She's 11.
She's 11. What about Douglas? How old is he?
$21.
So remember, Douglas is already in college. He's in the university. Who's Richard Stevens?
That's not his brother.
Okay, the brother.
He's 57.
And what about the brother? Look at the last column before the gray area. What does it say on the last column before the gray area?
He's permanently disabled.
Okay,
And that he cannot support himself, I believe.
right, and that was in the notes. So all of that becomes important on us trying to figure out what we're gonna enter in the dependents. So Melissa here is a daughter and Douglas is a son. And so we already determined the age of Melissa. Okay, and remember that Melissa also went to daycare after school in order for them to work. That becomes important. Again, age triggers a lot of the benefits and allows for the benefits. So those are things to remember. So I'm going to come down here. And again, to enter the information, we're using the Social Security cards. And so there's Melissa. So I'm going to enter her name. And again, the middle initial, and I need to expand this to see the middle initial, otherwise I won't see it. There. Okay, the last name, if you notice, the last name automatically appeared. Now her date of birth. So I'm going to come back up to look at the information. And so May 7th of 2010. And then her Social Security number, 32700. And then we add the rest of the information. She's a daughter. Lived with them for 12 months. All of that information is in the intake form. So it's right in here. It's in what they filled out in here. So there's your 12 months. She's a US citizen. So right in here. Okay, nothing that we need to fill out for the dependent. So we continue. Okay, we're gonna add another one at the top. And so now the next one is the son. And so the son information is there. If I can get it right. Okay, the son is Douglas. And he's got a middle initial. And the last name's correct. And now, when was he born? He was born on January the 14th of 2000. And then his number. Okay. So for him, what are the boxes we're gonna fill at the bottom?
He's over 18, a college student.
Okay, so box 1.
Um,
And let me just visit that in your 4012 before I forget. So I'm going to go to the 4012. Oops. And this area is dependents. So I'm looking at C3. So table 1, all dependents. So in particular, step number 6. And step number 6, it says, was a person under the age of 19 at the end of the year and younger than you, or under the age of 24 at the end of the year, a full-time student and younger than you, or, and then of course, then there's the other one, any age if permanently and totally disabled at any time during the year. And again, this is determining dependence in general. And then over here, it continues with a qualifying relative dependent. And I'm trying to find the other table. Let's see if I can find it. I think that one's going to be under the head of household. Okay, that won't confuse you. I'm just going to stop right there.
what is that multiple support declaration?
That's mainly for kids of separated or divorced parents. This one. And the parent will tell you what the situation is. The majority of the time, the one that is considered the legal guardian or the custodial parent will always have the say-so as to how that's treated. In addition to that is usually when there's a divorce decree or some formal separation document, you want to have all of that documented. So that way everything is in writing. But this is in regards to that. There are instances, very few, where the custodial parent may allow the non-custodial parent to be able to claim the son or daughter. And of course, there has to be a form that's filled out, the form 8332, that allows for that to happen. But usually the parent, usually the custodial parent, is the one that's going to disclose or say anything in regards to that.
So that's the only thing we're checking off, is that he's over 18 and a full-time student at an institution.
Right. So number 6. So that's the reason we're able to go ahead and place him as a dependent. So
And then we're
it.
adding the brother.
Right. So I'm going to finish with this one here for Douglas. And now we're going to add another dependent, which is a brother. Oops. And so the brother is Richard. Arthur, and just be careful with the last name. The system maintains the last name of the primary taxpayer. So you need to just pay attention to the Social Security card. So from the intake form, I'm going to use his date of birth, September 5th of 1964. His Social Security number. The relationship here, brother. So what are we going to fill out for the brother at the bottom?
Check if the person was disabled.
Okay. So again, making sure that we select the ones that pertain in this case to the dependent. So we're gonna continue. So we have the 3 dependents that we've added. And so we're gonna continue.
So in this case, he only brought in $3,900, so we wouldn't fit that unless he had made over 4,300.
Right, I believe the notes
We
stated,
only make 39.
right, the notes stated that he did not provide for his own support. I think that's what the notes stated. Let me see.
Yeah, he just brought in, his income was only 3,900 in Social
Correct.
Security benefits, which if it had been higher or over 4,300, we would have checked that one off too.
Well, because his only source of income is Social Security benefits, and he did not provide for his own support, then that 4,300 wouldn't take into effect in his case. Because as long as he's able to show that he's not providing for his own support. Now, if he gets other sources of income and he's providing for his own support, then that's different. But there is a worksheet that a person can complete to in fact document whether he is or she is providing for his own support, in case there's any questions. Okay, so now we move on. So the next section. Let me see the next section. Okay, so continue here. Okay, so they did not have issues with identity. No, according to the intake sheet. So there's your recovery rebate credit. And so this is a recovery rebate credit that they told us, and we're going to use the information that's provided in their notes. They had a total of the 2,800 plus the 1,400, so they had a total of 4,200. So this is important right here to answer the question or to answer this area. If we bypass it, we leave it blank, the system's gonna assume that the taxpayer did not receive this third stimulus. So again, not to leave it blank. So we're gonna say yes, so we did receive. So here it tells us that the client should have received notice 1444 from the IRS that tells them how much they received. So we're gonna show a total of, in their case, $4,200. Did you all see that in your notes?
No, I'm actually looking for that. Where exactly is that?
Okay, hold on. It's after the Social Security. It's right in here.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And again, just keep in mind that the recovery payment, the economic recovery payment is the one that was received sometime in March or April. And this is a one that I mentioned that that gave everybody the same amount, $1,400 for everyone that appeared in the tax return, and they either used 2019 or 2020. And everyone received $1,400, which is very different from the previous two stimulus payments that were issued in year 2020. And so again, if someone were to tell you, oh, I don't remember or I didn't receive one, this is a somewhat of a easy calculation. I don't want to say easy, but it's $1,400 times whoever appeared on the tax return. And so again, this is different than the other one, which is the receiving and opting in to the advanced child tax credit payment. And those are a total of 6 payments for this current tax year, starting in July. And the last one is ending tomorrow.
So in this case, the qualifying child was the daughter, but there wasn't anything for the son because of his age?
And that was the tricky part. This is what they gave me. So technically there would have been 5 for $1,400. Because there's 5 people on the tax return.
Right, so they should have gotten 5 or?
I'm assuming
Yes.
that should have been the 5 times the 1,400. But since this is what was given in the, I don't wanna like confuse people, but yes, technically you would be 5 times the 1,400. That technically is correct. Let me, I'm gonna continue here. And I guess I'll come back to this. I just remembered something, but I'll come back to it so that I don't get off the or leave the practice lab idle, because then it'll lock me off. Okay. So if you notice here along the left side of the screen, you'll always have the tree of the information as you're working through it. So right now we're already in the federal section and we're in the sources of income. So based on the information that's provided, we have 1, 2 W-2s. So that's what we're gonna enter first. So I'm going to begin. And it's kind of hard for me to maintain both screens here. So there's your W-2 information. And I can't work with it like that. So, okay. So the first W-2 is for Gail. So in your W-2 form is, since this is a married filing joint return, you will always have the primary and the secondary that appears in the form. So we need to make sure we check the correct name or whoever the W-2 belongs to. In this case, Gail. The EIN number. So an important piece is the employer identification number. And employer identification number is letter B on the W-2. Do not get it confused with letter A, which is the employee social security number. If you happen to enter the incorrect number, the system will create an automatic reject for the return for a very simple mistake. And so we don't want to do that because that's a careless mistake. Okay, so EIN number. So I'm going to enter the 501. And I'm going to enter a number that I had previously created for this one. So the information will populate, hopefully. And there it is. So I'm entering 501 74 2021. And this is what happens at the actual VITA site. Once an EIN number has been used, it automatically populates the information because somebody else has already entered that information. So it's already in here. So wages. Be very careful when you're doing this and the actual, when we're doing the services in the information that's been provided to us in the W-2. If you notice box 1, 3, and 5 are the same. That's not always the case, especially when somebody is contributing to a retirement plan. So if they're contributing to a retirement plan, box 1 will be different from box 3 and 5. And so again, making sure that we pay attention to those areas. So here they have it all the same. So I'm just gonna populate it as is. And once we're in the form, it's important to tab versus clicking. Because if you click when you're in the form, it's a lot easier to bypass fields. And so here, if you notice, by default, boxes 3, 4, 5, and 6 were automatically populated. And again, paying attention to the W-2. So if you notice, box 12A is populated. So down here. And if you notice the code, E, and the amount. You add another row because there's another one. And the amount. Okay, so let me pause here because I just remembered something. There's a lot of things to remember as you're doing this. So I'm gonna momentarily go to my 4012. And this is in the income section. Okay, the information on how to enter W-2s. Again, like I mentioned early on, your 4012 gives you the screenshots of each area within tax layer that you need to populate information. So again, this is a screenshot of your W-2. And this is where we're at. So it gives you information on what should appear in the boxes. So what I wanted to show you, I'm just gonna scroll down. Right in here, what we just entered. Box 12 and the codes. And then it tells you here in regards to the codes. It's important that even though the information is provided to us, it's important to understand what the codes are, and the codes are right in here. So for this one, we entered a code E, and there's your code E. What it means, it's an elective deferral for a 403B. The 2Ds, that is when you have an employer health insurance plan, and the 2Ds is the cost of what your employer is paying on your behalf for you to have health insurance. So these are the codes that you're gonna find in box 12. And again, your 4012 provides you with a lot of information as you're entering into the tax layer for the tax return.
Miss Alice,
Yes,
could you please repeat the EIN for the employer so I can enter and the system can populate?
I used 501 74 2021.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So again, paying attention to the W-2, what else is populated that I have not populated? What else is populated on the W-2 that I have not populated?
The retirement plan.
Right in here. Section 13 or area 13 of the W-2 is an area that is bypassed. Okay, so it's extremely important to pay attention to this area. The other area that we do sometimes see populated is area 14. Again, if you notice, it has codes. What we see at our tax site is we get W-2s where none of the codes are listed. And so there you have it. Other, not listed here, is the one that we would use because we don't see that in our case. So back to your 4012. I'm gonna go back. So this is entering Medicaid waiver payments. I'm not gonna go through there, but I just wanted to show you, go back to your, if you go back to the actual site, see there's the information in regards to that, if the W-2 indicates any of that. And nothing else on the W-2 that we need to populate. And so we have another one to enter. So save and enter another. Again, we have the same form. And if you notice, the next W-2 belongs to whom?
Thomas.
Thomas. Let me try to get back the scenario. So here is the next one, and there's Thomas. So making sure that we need to select Thomas as a recipient of this W-2. And again, I'm going to use the same information. And again, I'm using the same number, 7/4/2021, and it should populate the information.
Thank you. Ahí pónmela, amor. Ahí pónmela, ahí pónmela. Donde hay ese espacio.
And again, this is what will happen at the tax site, but once it's been used, it automatically gets populated. Again, information that appears on the W-2. And I forgot to mention, as you start entering information, you already start seeing AGI on the far upper right and federal refund. So if the federal refund, if this appears in green, that means it's a refund. If it appears in red, that means that they owe. So if you notice, this one does not have anything on box 12, but does have box 13. And it has under other for 14, if you notice, it says union. So if we don't have anything specifically that says union, Then it goes under other and the amount. And I forgot to mention something else. So at the very bottom of your W-2s, you have the state information. So we do have our clients, many of them go to work in Minnesota, Nebraska, other states in which they do have a state income tax. And so if there's any information there, we enter it as it appears. And eventually we will do a state income tax return for them as well in the process. And again, this is there. And again, when we getting W-2s for the state of Texas, of course, we don't see that information. And sometimes they might just put it in there just because of the software that they have. But again, it has no basis. Save and continue, actually, because I don't think we have another W-2. So again, you start seeing the information here changing as you enter the information. Okay, the next one.
What was the tax withheld for the last W-2, Ms. Solis?
Let me see. 1,600.
1,600, okay, thank you.
Mhm. Okay, the next one is interest income. Again, 1099 INT. Focusing on the form that you have at hand. The site will give you that information as well. So you have an idea where to enter the information. So we continue. And if you notice, here's your 1099 INT. That's your interest. So we'll enter here. And the one at the top, interest or dividend income. The very first one. Again, the information as it appears on the form, the payer's name is the bank or wherever the money was held that it paid interest. So I'm just going to enter the information as it appears on the form. And since I already had it there, I'll just accept what I had entered previously. The payer identification number. Again, making sure that we use a payer. And again, I'll just use a number that I had previously used. And if you notice, this one's a little bit different because even if I put the EIN number and nothing else populates, because you do have to enter manually the payer's name. It just works a little bit different. So the address name that's been, or the address that's been provided on the form. And the zip code 06101. And then let me see in this form. So if you notice the form, the name on the form, and let me go back to so the name on the form on the interest income is to Thomas. So again, just so that we note the correct recipient's name, information. And so we're gonna note that on the actual software. So the form belongs to the spouse right in here. Interest income as it appears on box 1. is 1,000. Early withdrawal penalty, 100. This one does have interest. The form does have interest on US savings bonds and treasury obligations, which is box 3. So let me go back to the form. So right in here, the 459. So this is 459. Federal income tax withheld. Now it's up to you when you're dealing with cents. If you want to enter the cents or you want to round up to the nearest dollar. The system will automatically round up to the nearest dollar once you save the form. So again, it just depends how you want to enter it. Nothing else has been populated on the form. Okay, so we continue. There's no other interest, so we continue. We continue here. And the next one is a 1099-R. And it's right in here. I'm gonna go back. So this is the next form. So again, you have the form here, 1099-R, belongs to Thomas. And then you have the information here. So 1099-R. And it's the first one at the top. And belongs to Thomas. Again, the payer. And I'm gonna use the number that I had previous. So I used 509-742021. Gross distribution as it appears on the form. Okay, so here I just need to mention a few things in regards to the form itself and the certification level. So if you get this form from a client, if box 1 and box 2 are populated with the same amount, then a person in the basic level certification can do the return. However, if box 2, meaning the taxable amount is not pre-calculated, then you cannot do it if you're in the basic level. It requires someone with an advance. Because if box 2 is not populated, meaning the taxable amount has not been processed or figured out, then it requires the advance, because then in the process, you're going to go through in the system, the simplified method to figure out the taxable amount portion. So again, extremely important to pay attention to this form, because it just depends how it's populated and who can and cannot do it. So federal income tax withheld, 2168. Employee contribution or insurance payments, 1950. Distribution code is a 3. and 9B. It's populated. Okay, so before I get out of here, I need to go visit my 4012 because this is an area that we need to visit in your 4012. So I'm going to, and I have here it's D38, so I'm just gonna run through this. Oops. I think I ran too fast. Okay, right in here. This is in D38 that I'm looking at. Okay, so that's one area. And writing, well, that's the simplified method. That's the advanced level. Okay. So right in here, this is page D35 in your 4012. So this is the form that we were at on the 1099-R. And here is the information regarding distribution codes. Okay, and if you recall, the distribution code was a 3 on the form. And so that becomes important. So I'm gonna go find my codes. My codes are a little bit further down. Right in here. So remember that Thomas is now a retired police officer, because on the notes it stated he was a police officer for 22 years until May of 2021, when he was injured on the job and retired on disability from the police department. He would have been able to retire at age 60. His medical costs were covered by his insurance. He was able to maintain health coverage to the department with premiums paid from his disability pension. So code 3 means that code 3 is for disability pension. If the taxpayer is under the minimum retirement age for the company he retired from, then check the box under the rollover disability that says check here to report his wages on his form 1040. This will reclassify the disability income as wages, and it will also include the amount in earned income for calculation of the earned income credit, the dependent care credit, and the additional child tax credit. Okay, so which means he's in that bullet, okay, because he has not met the retirement age, because the other thing we need to look at is when was he born and how old is he? That's the other question. How old is he?
Is he like 58?
He's 58. Let's see, let's come up to the information here.
It was October 1st of 65.
So October 1st,
65.
65. So 2021 minus 1965. Okay, so he's 56. So his retirement age based on the company is 60. So that means he retired before the prescribed retirement age from his employer, which means he's subject to that area of code 3, which means we are going to have to click the box on the Form 1099 that states that his income from his 1099 will be part of his earned income that will appear as if he had worked or he had regular earned income. That's what we're gonna have to do there in that box. So let me go back to the 4012. And so again, code 3. So we come back to your form. So right in here, check here to report on form 1040 line 1, distribution code must be a 3. So we're gonna indicate that there. So then, so that would be as regular income. So I'm going to continue here. Okay, and now we get this warning basically. And it says you've indicated that you want to report the 1099 distribution on line 1 of your return. You should generally only make this election if one of the following applies. The distribution from the disability pension and you have not reached the minimum retirement age set by the employer. If this is a disability pension, the distribution code should generally be a 3. The minimum retirement age may vary from employer to employer. You will need to check with that employer to determine if you have reached the minimum retirement age or not. So in this case, based on the information that was provided, he did not meet the retirement age that prescribed by his employer. So all we do here is continue.
I didn't get that window.
Which window? The window that I was at?
That one that you just saw, yeah, you just
I
showed.
did.
Did you put a check mark on the box that said to include it as part of income? Let me go back.
Probably not. Let me double check.
Yeah, it's at the very bottom. Right here, where it says rollover disability,
Okay,
right in here.
the second one, right?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Now, so you got to remember, even though we entered all that information, and it happened to us a lot last year because of the COVID situation that we're in. We saw a lot of people having early distributions on a retirement plan, and 9 out of 10 times it was COVID related. And so I'm assuming that this tax year we're going to have the same situation. And so there is a way to go through the process of setting that up as an exemption. And again, those are things that will be told to us by the client. If in fact we have 1099-Rs. As for me, I mean, I've been doing taxes for almost, well, not 20 years. Code 3 is not something that I've seen. Like I said, the most common ones are the code 1 of early distribution, meaning, you know, they're 35 years old and they're receiving already a distribution from retirement. And, you know, and they have a code 1 because that's considered early distribution, which means they're going to be subject to additional tax, usually the 10%. And so last year and this year, there's still the stipulation of there's exemptions for it if that's the case, but the client has to, you know, disclose. And the way they're going to disclose is, you know, by us asking them, why did you remove money? Why did you get an early distribution from your retirement plan? And if it says it was COVID related because, you know, I had to quit my job temporarily or so forth, or whatever the case might be, then there is an exemption for that. And so again, this area is related to that. And it's asking, was this withdrawal due to a qualified disaster? And it tells you at the top, coronavirus is a qualified disaster. And again, that's the reason this question is here. But in this case, for him, we know that it's a no, because it's for a different situation. And so we continue. And so you should have seen, if you didn't pay attention previous to filling out or completing the form and continuing with this form, the AGI was less, and now it's higher because the amount is being treated as regular earned income because of that code 3. So we're gonna continue here. And let's see what's next. 1099R. Okay, so there's another 1099R. And this is the one that we need to pay attention to. And this is the one that I was talking about earlier. So let me go to this. So on the forms, he's got another 1099R. And this one does have a notation. And it's this one right here. So this is the one that I was mentioning. If you notice, this 1099R has a code 1, and we'll go through the code again. And right underneath, he took this as an early withdrawal from his IRA in June to pay bills that had built up following his injury and before his disability pension began. And so this is another of those exemptions. Again, depending on why he took out money. And so that way he does not get assessed the penalty for early withdrawal. So again, we're gonna set up the form. So I'm gonna go back. And so it's another 1099R. So I need to just go back in there. And we're gonna add a form. And again, the form belongs to Thomas. And I'm gonna enter the number 508, and I'm using the 742021. And the gross distribution is 1,000. Taxable amount is 1,000. They did have federal income tax withheld of 100. Distribution is a 1. And the IRA SEP simple is identified. So I'm gonna go to the 4012 again. So I'm gonna go back 4012 and back to the codes. And so there you have the early distribution. And so again, the second bullet, if it was not a rolled over, a 10% additional tax will be applied unless the taxpayer qualifies for an exemption. See tab H, other taxes, payments, and refundable credits for a list of exemptions. If the taxpayer qualifies for an exemption, go to form 5329, additional taxes or qualified plans, and so forth. So I'm going to visit tab H from here. Okay, there it is. And let's see where we find it. So this is tab H. Okay, so this is gonna give us a list of certain things. And so I'm just looking for that particular list. And I don't know if they give it to us here. Right in here. So this is on page H5. So this is a list. So right in here, regarding the number 5, qualified retirement plan distribution. The amount you pay for unreimbursed medical expenses during the year. And again, he's not doing Schedule A, so we're gonna use that exemption so that he doesn't have to pay the 10% that will be assessed for the early distribution. And in the process, we're going to go eventually to that section in the software to fill out the 5329. So at the top, it gives you a sample of the form 5329, and we would just enter the information on the form. So I'm gonna go back to this, and let's see the 100, and I think I had completed all that. So the exemption is done somewhere else, so we complete this as is. Okay, it's from a retirement plan. And we continue. And we're gonna say yes. Because remember, the medical expenses and so forth. Let's see, is it this one?
So I got a window that says your distribution code indicates your 1099 is reporting an early distribution.
Okay, hold on. I think I'm in the wrong area here. I need to back. This is not the area. You need to go somewhere else. So here we say no. This is not the correct area. So make sure you put no on this area. So let's see. Hold on. Let me continue here. So what did you get?
It's just a window. It says that your distribution code box 7 indicates reporting an early distribution.
So you put on box 7, you put a 1?
Yes.
And you checked out the RASEP simple?
Yes.
And that was it, and you continue?
Yep.
Okay, and the retirement plan is the first option? Is marked?
Yes.
And you continue.
Okay. Retirement plan.
And here we're gonna put no, because it's not the correct section to do the exemption somewhere else.
Okay.
Is that-
Gotcha.
Yes? Okay. So we continue. Just remind me, we need to do the exemption, but it's somewhere else. Okay, so 1099R. Okay, so we're gonna continue. And if I remember correctly, this problem had other sources of income that were in the notes. Other sources of income. And then we have credits. So I'm gonna continue here. So in the notes, let me go back. So in the notes on that problem, it told you that she served as a juror. Right in here. Gail was a juror for 4 weeks. While serving on the jury, she received $40 per day. And then her employer continued to pay for her salary for the first 2 weeks. On the condition that any jury duty pay received during those 10 weekdays be surrendered to the employer. So this is a income area, and then it'll be an adjustment to income because of the source of income that she received for the $40 per day for 20 days. And then she's having to surrender 10 of those days back to the employer. So again, a portion of it is source of income, and the other portion is an adjustment to income as she's surrendering a portion of her income. Then we have the student loan interest. That's also an adjustment to income. She had $800. And then the educator expenses, that's also an adjustment to income. So let's take care of the source of income, in this case, the jury duty. So it was 20 days times $40. So what is going to be the total income for jury duty?
800.
800. I'm gonna go back in here. And so we're still in the area of income. And it's at the very bottom, less common income. And other income not reported elsewhere. And there's jury duty paid. $800. Be careful with this. Let me see my 4012. I need to go back to my 4012. Think it's tab D. Tab D. Less common income, D53. Okay, right in here. Where is it? Right in here. In page, what page was this? D53? Yeah. So this is the area of less common income. Be careful with this one. Jury duty pay, and it tells you not considered earned income for earned income credit. So in that area of the software, make sure that we do not check or select earned income, because that is not a source of earned income, in this case for the earned income credit. So it's the 800. We continue. And I believe that's all the sources of income. Now we need to work on the adjustments. So back to the notes. So the adjustments are going to be 3. The jury duty pay that they paid back, the student loan interest, and the educator expenses. So less common income, I continue. We're done with income, continue. And so now we're in the adjustments area. You notice there's the educator expenses and there's a student loan interest. So educator expense. And let me go back in here. The adjustments section right in here. So adjustment sections is tab E, and there's your educator expense. So again, for the educator expense, as a VITA site, we're not expected to see receipts. However, we always encourage the client to have receipts at home or wherever they keep receipts. If it's a married filing jointly and they're both teachers, then the max is $250 per. meaning 500 in total. But it doesn't mean that if they only have receipts for $100, that we're gonna enter 250. No, if they give us an amount, yes, I spend $500 and it's only one person, okay, we're gonna show the max of 250. But again, it's dependent upon whatever they have as actual receipts. And again, we do not need to see actual receipts, but we encourage them to have receipts. Again, this is for out-of-pocket expenses, meaning they shouldn't have been reimbursed or paid for any of those expenses, that they were all out of pocket, and that they are legitimate expenses. This does not include if they'd had a health class or any other things. Here it tells you for expenses for homeschooling or non-athletic supplies for courses in health or physical education. These are non-qualifying expenses. Then it tells you what are qualifying expenses of what they can show as true expenses. So again, this is the area of educator expense. So in the notes, they told us that she purchased $675.87 worth of supplies. So she's a primary taxpayer, so we'll put it at the top. So we continue. The other one is at the bottom, the student loan interest. And again, going back to the 4012. Let me see where the student loan interest is. Let me see. Should be around here. There it is. So student loan interest, you can reduce your income subject to tax for up to $2,500. And again, this is just the student loan interest. And again, the client should have the form, the 1098E. If they don't have it, again, most of these accounts can be accessed on the phone, on the computer, and they can look up the information. So the student loan interest is $675. I'm sorry. Oops, $800. Wrong amount. The other one is the adjustment on the jury duty pay that she gave back. So she surrendered 10 days at $40 per day. So how much did she surrender?
400.
So 400. So that goes under other adjustments at the very bottom. And there it is, jury duty pay, and it's $400. And I believe that's it for the area of adjustments. We move on to credits.
I had a question. She talked about the 1098, but oh, she couldn't find it. Never mind, I read it.
Yeah, that they used the one from last year's. Usually that's not something that we want to do. Like I said, most of people have access to their accounts online, and they can access it on their phone. They can access it on the computer. You know, we prefer to have current information versus previous information, because everything's subject to change, especially right now in regards to that. The CARES Act I know a lot of the federal government and a lot of educational institutions of higher ed, through the CARES Act, they've been able to forfeit some of the balances that the students had on their accounts, whether it be because they owed on whatever. They had a loan with the institution, they had a federal loan and so forth. So some of that has been forfeited. So some of that could be adjusted. So again, it's important to access the form, especially on those that are volatile and change depending on what's going on. So the next one is the tuition statement. So let me go back. Where am I? Here. Well, there's a tuition statement and there's a child tax credit. The child, okay. Since we're in this area, let's see. Let's take care of the child tax or the child tax. Let's take care of the dependent care. Again, this one will be under credits. So she paid $1,500 to the Hillsdale School District for after school for Melissa. So this is the child care. So I'm gonna visit first the 4012 regarding the child care. So I'm gonna go up here and the child care. Oh, this is, I think, one of those that has changes. Right in here, tab G. Okay, so this is an area that has changes for the upcoming tax year. So in 2021, for the first time, the credit is fully refundable, meaning people can get this back, a part of the refund, versus before it was all non-refundable, meaning they couldn't get it back because its only job was reduce taxes to 0. But in this case, it's fully refundable. If the taxpayer spouse if married, filing jointly, had a principal place of Adobe in the United States for more than half of the year, this means that an eligible family can get it even if they owe no federal income tax, again, because it's now refundable. So a child must be under the age of 13 when the expenses were incurred and who can be claimed as a dependent. So again, we're talking about Melissa. So how old is Melissa? Did we figure out?
She's 11.
She's
Oh, yeah.
11. So she qualifies for the dependent care. So that is a big change. Let me see what else is in here. Okay, so there's a screen. Okay, and here's the screenshot of the software. So I'm gonna go back. And so this is under credits menu, child and dependent care. So the child care credit. We add the facility first. And on the information that was provided, let me see here.
What section was that? I'm sorry.
This section is under credits. Let me go back. So let me cancel. So we're under section credits.
Credit. Okay, got it.
and the child care credit.
Okay, thank you.
And so the first thing is adding the provider information or the facility that provided the care. Remember that care may be provided by the neighbor, might be provided by a parent, but as long as we don't claim them on our tax return, they're not our dependents, we can pay them. The only thing is that they have to understand that you're inputting this information as you paying them for childcare, because in return, they have to then put it on their tax return as income. And so there has to be a check and balance. One put it as an expense, the other has to put it as an income, meaning, so if you're paying someone, they have to understand the implications of, I'm putting it here, you need to show it over there, because if you're paying someone, you need to get their social security number. And that's why you have the option here, social security number or an ITA number. And of course, if it's a facility of daycare, then you have the EIN number, which in this case, they provided the facility number, the EIN number on the notes. So I'm gonna take the information from the notes.
I have
And
a
so
question.
the EIN number,
I have
So
a question,
then you-
Ms. Solis.
I'm sorry?
I have a question in reference to the I-team. The person has to provide it just verbally, read in any type of proof or no?
Well, the person that's gonna put it as an expense has to have it in writing or has to know of it. We do not need to see a card. We do not need to see the social security number. We do not need to see the formal letter of the I-10. But like I mentioned, if you're gonna put it as an expense, the other person needs to understand that they need to report it as income.
Thank you.
Yes. So let's see, where are my notes here? I know my notes are in here somewhere. Right in here. So here's the information of the child care. Okay, so I'm gonna use that on the software. So I'm gonna use 501 and 74/2021. And there's the Hillsdale School District. So it automatically populates the amount that was paid for child care is $1,500. And I think I forgot to mention something. Okay, the other thing that this area saw a big difference is the amount that is allowable per qualifying person. Okay, now we're looking at $8,000. So this is a significant change in the amount. If you have more than one person, it goes up to $16,000. So this is a significant change from previous years. And if I remember correctly, I'm trying to remember, but it was in that webinar that I mentioned. I want to say this is one that I believe it's now 50% that is refundable. And so again, this area has seen a significant change as we're looking at this next tax year. Okay, so $1,500, and we continue. Now, this section of the child care is a little bit confusing because you do need to enter the facility first, and you need to show the amount that was paid to the facility. Then you're gonna assign the dependents to which the care was provided to. And if you notice, the dependents are two. Melissa, we determined she's 11 years old. So if Melissa were 15, she would not appear here. Because again, driven by age. Now you notice Richard Stevens appears here because of the situation that he's totally and permanently disabled. However, we don't have any information on him as far as any type of care. Okay, so for him, we're just gonna show that we don't have any expenses for him, and it's proper to do that so that we don't leave him blank. So Melissa was the only one that had any care. So we go under the edit for Melissa. And we're gonna enter the amount. And we continue. And for Richard Stevens, we don't have anything, but I'm still gonna edit. And I'm gonna show that I did visit his information, and he does not have any qualifying expenses because we don't have anything for him. But I'm gonna do this so that I can show that I did in fact make sure come and visit his information and noted that he did not have any qualifying expenses. And again, that's a proper thing to do because he did appear on the list. So you cannot get out of this form if you have a difference. So whatever you set up as expenses for the facility must be again distributed to a dependent. So that's how you get a zero difference here. Again, if you get anything there, it's going to give you an error message. It will not allow you to continue. Continue to the second page. Now the second page is only for the purpose of this area allows if, for example, one of the primary taxpayers did not work. However, they went to school. They were taking classes at Texas Alamos College. Well, it allows to have a source of earned income if you are taking classes in higher education, you're in school or so forth. And so you can come in here and put in the amount that would be considered earned income. The child care credit is also driven by having a source of earned income. And so that's the reason of the second page. And so for them, we're gonna leave it blank. So I'm gonna continue here. Okay, so I believe the last item we have is the for the credits is a 1098T, which is the education credits. So I'm gonna go back to the information. And the education credit right here for Douglas. So it gives us a 1098T. So it tells us he's a freshman at Ashland University. He's never been convicted. His scholarship is restricted to his tuition and fees. He also purchased textbooks, 375 from the university, 2 from another student, and had to purchase software. So on the form in itself, box 1 and box 5 are always extremely important when you're looking at the form. Box 8 automatically tells you whether they were at least a half-time student. So for the education credit, we're gonna take the 7,800 that appears on box 1 and subtract it from box 5. So when you do that, let me see here. So we're gonna take the 7,800 minus the scholarships or grants. Because remember, we're looking at what was out of pocket. So out of pocket, just looking at these two boxes, out of pocket was 3,300 plus whatever else they paid. And so they paid books, 2 more from another student, and the purchase of a software. And again, these are all educational expenses. So we're looking at 4,005 of education expenses. So I'm gonna come back. Okay, so I'm gonna come back for my 4012. Education expenses. Okay, education credits. Okay, education expenses. Okay, so here it is. So here it tells you what qualifies as education expenses, and I'm looking for the table here. I'm gonna scroll, find the table right in here. So here is the options. So a person may qualify for the American Opportunity Credit. So this is normally for only the 4 tax years, meaning technically, okay, you're talking about being a freshman, sophomore, junior, or senior for this one, technically. And then beyond that is the lifetime learning credit. So this table provides you information regarding each one and the comparison. Let me see. Okay. So I'm gonna go back. Let me see. And of course, here it gives you more information and so forth. So I'm gonna go back to the software. And there's the education credit. So up here, we assigned a person that was a student. And it's Douglas. And we're assigning the American. Qualified expenses, we ended up with 4,005. The institution is whatever appears on the form. And before I forget, as I'm entering this, I just remembered a few things with where we're at our VITA side, we get a lot of these. Unfortunately, there are some institutions that no longer produce a 1098T. Only because they look at box 5. If box 5 is greater than box 1, many institutions no longer produce a 1098T. And so if that's the case, then you need to have the student pull their itemized statement. Otherwise, they will not be using it, or in this case, their parents. And so it's important that you recognize that some institutions no longer produce it. They don't even produce it as an online source either. So that's where statements come in. They need to produce statements and basically figuring out what did they actually pay out of pocket. So here, did the student receive Form 1098T? Yes. Did the student receive Form 1098T from the institution And so we're gonna say no because we have no knowledge of that. Oops, I just realized I put the wrong number here. Okay. The institution number. So has a Hope Scholarship credit or American Opportunity credit been claimed on the previous 4 prior tax returns? And the answer is no. They told us he was a freshman. Yes, it's noted on the form. No, again, he's a freshman. He's not been convicted. And we continue. And there's the information that's been entered. Continue. And I'm missing one more thing before I forget. Can anyone remember what I'm missing?
The exemption for a Form 5329?
Yes. So that one is further down. So we're done with deductions. Right in here, other taxes. Tax on early distribution. The form is 5329. This is where we're gonna allow an exemption for not getting assessed 10%. So 10% of 1,000 would be $100. So if you notice, currently, my federal tax return refund amount is $11,733. So as we move on and we enter this should move up by $100. Only because it will not assess the 10% on the 1,000. So I'm gonna enter the information here. And this was for Thomas. And early distribution that are not subject to the 10% was the $1,000. That was how much will not be subject. And that is from the 1099-R that had a distribution code of 1. And so here, we're gonna relate it back to the medical expenses. And again, let me go back here. Yeah. So I'm gonna, that's all that I need to complete there at the top. And I'm gonna continue. And that should go up by $100. And it did go up by $100. So it was $11,733. Now it's $11,833. So it gives them back the $100, which was the 10% that was being assessed. Okay, so one of the things we did not factor in here, and this is going to be crucial on the once we start the VITA services, is the advanced child tax credit. And for now, we're not going to be touching it here. Only because we still need to see how it's going to play out. And if you notice, I haven't seen anything here just yet. And so again, this is a recovery that we did earlier. Okay, health insurance. They didn't get any health insurance through the marketplace. Okay, continue for the state. And this is their tax return.